Welcome to the SaaS Revolution Show. Larry Gadea, who's the CEO and founder of Envoy. Welcome, Larry.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. I don't know actually, if you remember, we didn't speak about it in the sort of preamble, but actually before SaaStock, I started a blog called SaaScribe, and I got you on for a Q&A. This must have been like 5 years ago.
Yeah, no, I remember. I was looking this up right before this, and I noticed it's like, hey, wait a second, we've talked, and like this was a while ago. Yeah, so much has changed.
Yeah, exactly. But so great to have you on the podcast for the first time. But yeah, I guess for those that don't know you, Larry, tell us a little bit about who you are, and then a little bit about Envoy.
Yeah. So my name is Larry Gadea. I'm the founder and CEO of Envoy. Envoy is basically this kind of revolution for the workplace. There's all these different things that people are kind of put up with in the workplace, be it just like going through security practices, be it dealing with the process like package management or visitors coming in or meeting rooms. What we're trying to do is really bring a little bit more delight to all of this. And what we started with this product that a lot of people have used, which is kind of at the front desk. You type in your name, your email, maybe sign an NDA or something like that. It was more like a security product for the front desk, but now it's just expanded into this whole suite of products. And we're building now also for COVID and these times. And now it's growing into more and more businesses of different types since I guess even the last time we've spoken. But it's just incredible. It's something over 14,000 offices using our products on a daily basis, and then it's in all around the world, translated in multiple different languages. And it's just this big change that's happening in the workplace. People are expecting a lot more focus on experience and a lot more focus on thoughtfulness with data. And hopefully Envoy is able to help a lot of these companies. And it seems to be working.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I've seen Envoy, all over the place in London. Every office that I've ever signed into had Envoy. Which is great, and obviously I think since the impact of COVID, you guys have pivoted into some new products, which we'll get into in a bit. Before Envoy, I remember you used to be an engineer at Twitter, right?
Yeah.
And so what gave you the idea then to kind of leave Twitter, fly your Twitter wings, and then go and create this product, or just create your own startup, like let alone sort of product? So, what was the idea to do that, and how did you feel at the time leaving Twitter to create your own company?
Yeah, it's a scary moment for anyone, that's for sure. But I should mention that the decision became easier and easier as I spent more and more time in Silicon Valley. Basically, so before Twitter, I was at Google, and I was doing a whole bunch of different. I did front-end development, back-end development, and even some different kinds of mobile development as well. And then when I joined Twitter, it was like, okay, cool, this is a very small company. Twitter at the time was 40, 50 people, so much smaller than it is today, of course. And it was a really nice kind of period because I just learned so much about what it's like in a smaller company. There's very little that's organized. There's very little there's so much that you want to do that you really just can't get to because you just have these burning things that you have to deal with right now. So those kinds of situations, actually, I thought were really, really interesting. And even when joining Twitter, I was like, this is going to be a really interesting ride because this is a really early stage company. Now, what's interesting is I was a back-end systems engineer, and normally these people, they don't really make it to they don't end up running a company that does front-end user-facing things. But the way that it kind of ended up going is I was really interested in how my software was being used. Like, yes, I did back-end scaling and systems and that kind of thing, but it really ended up being this thing that as I was visiting different friends in different companies, as I was because at Twitter, it's it was this big thing, and it still is, but I had friends in every single type of company, and I'd go say hi, just bounce around different ideas, to the point where I noticed this one thing. Hey, whenever you go into somebody's office, there's a lot of processes you have to do. You don't really know which door to go in. You don't really know who to talk to. Is this the right time or is that the right time? And then once you're in, you're not really sure kind of where to go either. And it just seemed like this thing. It's like, why am I even having to think about this? So basically, what I ended up thinking about is like, hey, maybe there's something we can do literally around the workplace. I remember at Google, it was all thought through, all the little pieces were figured out. At Twitter, like they tried their best, and let me say, like Twitter was above and beyond most companies by far, but like we didn't have some things. We didn't have anything for visitors. We didn't have anything for like random parking stuff. We didn't have anything for the lunch menu and like being able to vote on the lunch menu and all of these different things that you would have and the practical things like in a meeting room and scheduling, making sure people are in there at the right time and using that room, or packages arriving, or door access being on something you don't forget somewhere. So this is a problem. It's a suite of problems that really interested me because it's something that is so good in some companies like Google, Facebook, Apple. They built all their own versions of all of these independently without talking to each other and not available commercially. They basically made it for themselves because they saw such a strong need. And then you look at all these other companies and it's not like they don't have the need. There's companies that are much bigger than these companies. There's companies that have a lot of different like compliance requirements, security requirements. So it was very interesting to see this. And I was kind of like, well, I see that it is possible to change things because Twitter was starting to build up all these systems on their own internally as well, but slowly from scratch. And it became a little silly to see kind of these companies dedicating full-on engineers and product managers and even like designers to these back office almost problems, and they just kept on redoing it. So I guess the impetus was I looked around and I noticed that like, oh, I think I noticed why this is happening, and the reason was just because the vendors that were available for this kind of thing, the vendors that are available to like kind of treat your visitors the best that you can, the vendors that are available for like making sure you have the most space efficiency in your workplace and that you're utilizing one area of the office just as much as the other, and meeting rooms and all that. This was not available in a way that companies, at least around here, who have extremely high expectations, these companies would never use the kinds of software that was available on the market at the time. It was running on these old like Dell machines from like the 80s or 90s on these like 10-year support contracts that like they couldn't get out of, and like all these different legacy ways of doing it. So it just seemed like a very clear, obvious place where there's a real transformation possible. And then we started Envoy, and we started with the most obvious spot possible, which is the front desk. Because we felt that if we build really great software that people would really enjoy using and just like being part of, they would definitely bring it to their own company. And that's exactly the motion that has brought us to our companies today. We're in these 14,000 offices. It got there because people see our software, they use it to sign in. They kind of have to like meet their host, but then they like on their own remember it, and they're like, oh, this wasn't terrible. This was actually kind of okay, and it was easy, and we got all this stuff out of the way too, and then they bring it to their own company, and it's that, I guess, like loop that has gotten us into so many different offices, and now we're just changing everybody's minds about like, hey, there's a lot more going on in the office that's in that exact same broken state. And we're really excited because now we're getting to build for it. We now have like something, it's like 150 people all working to build different products around the workplace. We're planning on releasing a whole lot more. With Protect, we've launched a whole bunch, and we're actually pulling in a lot of stuff too. We can talk more about that. But it's really cool because we're just like now executing on this vision faster than ever, and companies are now actually thinking about their workplace, which is wonderful because there's so much innovation and so much excitement in store for them.
So I knew Envoy for that first product, say like signing into the office, as you said, there is that virality, of people kind of signing in, and also just remembering, what a great experience that was. And
I wonder if we can say virality these days.
Yeah, true. Yeah. But especially with the topic of this podcast, but yeah, but I think also, it was very much like a product-led growth to my business back then.
Yep.
As you started the business, or I mean, when you first came to my attention, I think it was probably TechCrunch piece or something like that. You just raised, I don't know, was it your seed or Series A with Andreessen Horowitz? And at that point, did you, did you have a product? Did you have revenue? What was it, that Andreessen Horowitz, kind of saw? Again, you've got like a rock star VC coming in, for somebody that's just, building their first company. Like what was the picture there? Like, what was it that they saw, within you, the product, to invest in you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because it's first of all, like most exciting and big impactful things, luck was a very, very big part of it. So I'm sure that they signed in at some company that they invested in or something like that. And then they're like, oh, hey, this is interesting. And it got it in their mind, and eventually critical mass happened internally, and then they reached out. But honestly, the way that fundraising happened, it was A, probably something like that led to them reaching out, and B, it was just the fact that we had customers already, and we had big customers. Like, these were like not just like random companies. These were like legit, like, it's like people, like, at the time it was like GoPro and Yelp, and like I think we had Fitbit at the time too, and a bunch more. And these are like all big brands that like don't just like pick something and it's like, okay, cool, whatever it is, just shove it in front of people. Like, these are companies that have a lot of approval processes, have a lot of like people like designers that are involved in making these kinds of decisions, even for facility software. So I think that what they noticed was that this is unusual to see a company be able to organically kind of attract these kinds of customers. And at the time, I think, I'm trying to remember our numbers. It was, I know when we did our seed round, it was like 30 customers, and I was pitching like 32, and I was very nervous because the 2 customers might not convert in time by the time I pitched to the person. So I like was concerned I wouldn't like be saying something wrong. But by the time we were at our Series A, I think it was at least about 100 customers that we had, and it was like, it was a team of like 2, maybe 3 people at the time. And you can be sure none of us were actually salespeople or actually knew what we were talking about. But it was just through product design and product, the way we built it, that people were very interested. And you always kind of want the product to kind of merit its way into a company. And today I feel it still does that very strongly. Though what we do have is people to navigate the very complex world of enterprise sales, which is incredibly wild and actually a very interesting challenge on its own. But it's, yeah, you kind of need a whole company for that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And since those days, obviously, you guys have been scaling, been really kind of growing the business, and then COVID has happened sort of this year. It's not happened to only just I guess the world, many SaaS companies, but then particular industries are have been sort of badly hit. And I think those within the kind of the workspace of the companies that are like renting out offices, and companies that typically would use products like Envoy, certainly feeling the adverse effects as well. So specifically to you guys, what was the impact of COVID, or still is?
Yeah, no, so let's be very clear. COVID is not great for companies that sell software for the workplace. Let's just be super clear here, because that's I think a very important point. Like, if you were selling anything to a physical workplace and then COVID hits, where literally the one major big change is that everybody has to go home, and no, you cannot come into the office, and in some cities by law. That causes some issues. Now, this is, I feel, where really it forces people to kind of decide: are you going to be working on building for like your current thing, and are you just going to be telling your company a story about like, no, just hang in there and continue doing the exact same thing, and don't worry, we'll come out of this and we'll be stronger than ever? Or are you going to be telling your company, we need to stop, we need to rethink about what we're doing, and it doesn't matter how long COVID goes, we need to find a real way of leveraging this and really being stronger because of COVID. And let's change all our things to make sure that we adapt to the environment. And honestly, I feel that this is where Silicon Valley shines most. It's a lot of like my founder friends and just people in general around here. It's the mindset of like, okay, cool, we have to change everything now because this is just how the world works, and we're going to. So this is definitely the mindset that I went into it, and our company went into it. And honestly, the executive team that we've built at Envoy has just been absolutely incredible in wanting big change all the time. So this has been really, really helpful because when COVID hit, we were like, okay, what are we going to do to appeal directly to COVID? Because we do not want to be those companies that just kind of sit by and hope it ends quickly. So one of the big discussions, even like a month in, a big discussion that started happening is companies were starting to talk about going back. And obviously everyone's talking about going back, but it's like, how do you do it safely? Because a lot of these companies were just kind of like putting people back in, and it's kind of like, well, whatever, they may get sick or not, like, we're not sure, but like, we're not liable, right? Because it's like an act of God, so like, no one's liable here, so let's shove people back into the workplace. And it's like, that's not exactly a great story for anyone and caring about your folks. So we were really thinking about this idea around like, what can we do to make the return to work safer? And it comes through a variety of protocols. It comes through, and this is literally what our Envoy Protect product suite does today, but it's around asking, literally just simply asking people, hey, have you been sick? Have you had COVID? Do you know someone that has that you've been near? And have you had these kinds of symptoms? It's around also when they come in, acknowledging that they've come in, so you can keep track that, okay, these people could be the people that could be, if something does break out, we know that these people could have been impacted. So we need to have that list so we can tell them, hey, FYI, somebody was sick that day. You should know this because you were there that day. And then it's around like how many people are in the office as well. There's all sorts of things around the I guess density of people in an office. You can't have that be very high right now, like people did in the past, because the percentage and likelihood of contracting this thing is much higher. So basically, what the Envoy Protect product suite does is it combines all of these different things. So we use our pre-registration functionality from before. Now we're adapting it for employees. And then the sign-in functionality that we have before, when people tap on the iPad, that's done through your phone now, using the Envoy mobile app that we already had, but it was mostly designed for visitors. Now it's more than ever designed for employees, and it further accelerates us now to being able to show all this information to employees as well. So now you get to see your meeting rooms as well, and what packages you have waiting for you, and when things are back to normal, what visitors are waiting for you at the front desk too. So it's kind of like we're able to pull in all these different products that we've been kind of working on and unify them all, but at the same time, we're able to help with a lot of the safety and those kinds of concerns in the workplace. And our existing customers absolutely love it because it's literally what they bought the visitors product for, but now they can use it for their own employees. And they know that our company is obsessive about an experience that employees would love using. So they just go with our existing product suite. And I think it's been wonderful. And the teams internally at our company have loved it. They love seeing new people on multiple products. And our customers too have been like, wow, I didn't know this kind of stuff was even waiting here. So it's been super motivating for all of us internally and the customers, of course, as well.
Can you talk us through like some of the steps of the pivot, if we'll call it that?
Yeah.
So, sort of realizing that rather than sit and wait for this to kind of blow over because we don't know, and having that mindset, as you say, Silicon Valley mindset of creating this new product. How did you go about that from that kind of like that first sort of like idea or realization? And did you have the idea, or was it somebody in the company? I mean, and not that it necessarily matters. And then through to, we've got a product and we've got a first customer. Can you talk me through a little bit of some of those steps?
Yeah, like any idea, it's a rendition of 50 other ideas that were all pitched around a table / like in different Slack channels or whatever. So that's I'm not sure where exactly the origin of the idea came from. Honestly, it was probably from our customers, just because they wrote in asking like, how can you help us this way? And but I know that I was personally involved in at least dozens of these like in-person meetings. It wasn't in person because it was on Zoom, but it was with the customer's main decision makers. And they were literally saying, hey, we've been asked to come up with a plan for when we do return. And we realize it may still be a few months, but what can you guys help us with? Because our door access vendor isn't really answering our emails. and you guys have been working with us already so well. So it's like, what would you like what can you do, and are you guys building things? So definitely customers reaching out and customers kind of wanting to work with us directly and iterating directly is one of the things that made this possible. But honestly, the thing that caused us to really think about like, hey, we need a plan here, is just around, and we did a blog post about this, where literally the visitors traffic that we had into our offices, or into like the offices globally of all the companies, dropped something like 80 or 90% over the span of maybe, what was it, like a week? So that's one of the core metrics that we use to kind of see like the health of the service, to see kind of the growth, and also to see, and that is our core product. So is mostly around that product. And then it's like, okay, this is dropping a lot. And you can imagine, of course, like we're like, we see a massive drop, and we expected something, but nobody really thought about like, well, what could it be? How big could it be? And then there was some time where we were like, okay, well, maybe what we should do is like really focus on the companies that have to still be at the workplace despite the thing. So an example would be like factories and warehouses and lab equipment, places where they have lab equipment. So like these pharma companies, they all still need it. Doesn't matter if they like they can't work from home basically. And that's like, we were thinking about that. But then it's just more and more customers were like, hey, how can you help us? And do you have any ideas about how we can return to work properly? And it just became very clear, like, we're going to have tons of customers to test with. And also in the end, like we talked with our customer success team and product team, we probably talked to hundreds of these customers to come up with a proper plan for this. And iterating with hundreds of beta, of like private beta customers is a crazy experience, let me tell you, because you have a team internally as well that's good at executing kind of like on a longer roadmap, so they can start like kind of parallelizing things and building a pipeline and moving quickly that way on multiple things. But now with COVID, a lot of those things are no longer relevant. So what we had to do was basically put them back on a single stream that changes literally every single, maybe other day, and at least weekly. The entire roadmap changes weekly. So this internally, it was definitely a big problem where people were like, whoa, this is like totally not the system I'm used to, and there's just a lot of thrash. And I totally empathize, because it literally was that, and that's what we were asking. And going into it, like it's I remember our VP of Eng was just like, hey, just like FYI, this is kind of going to cause a lot of thrash on the team right now, and this won't be great. We can still do it, and I think we should still do it, but like we need to be ahead of it. So this required a lot of communication with the internal team. This required a lot of like, hey, here's why we're doing this. And I still think today we're not the best at communicating internally as to why we're really like, this is really important, that's really important. It seems like a simple problem, but when it comes to it, there's just so many different parties, so many different like things that are being built, so much different context that makes it really, really tough to communicate with everyone, the reasons why for everything. But once we got it out there and the usage started coming in, especially around Envoy Mobile, people were like, okay, this is really a thing, and like it's working, and this is a product we've been trying to get traffic to for a long time, and now it's like it's coming to us. We don't even have to like really like force it or anything like that. And that's what's wonderful. It's allowed us to kind of be more natural about how we execute on things and more customer focused.
Amazing. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned in the last 3 months? You can say more than one, but if you want to just give us one lesson that you've learned over the last few months.
Ooh, yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I've learned a lot, and the company has learned a lot. And honestly, this has been the fastest moving period of our company ever, by far. And honestly, it's really around explaining kind of the why behind everything, and really focusing on the customer impact, as opposed to maybe like focusing on, here's all the money that we're making, or here's all the like long-term revenue, or the subscriptions, or that kind of thing. It's really about kind of motivating by hey, we are helping save people's lives. Hey, we're helping people like in a moment where like they don't really know what exactly to do. we're helping people when there's all these other factors going on outside, and like we're one of those companies that are actually out there building and creating. And I think that that's like one of the strongest ways of getting a group of folks to really understand why they're doing things. Whereas it's very, very easy, especially in B2B SaaS. B2B SaaS is notorious for just like revenue driven development, where literally everything gets tied to, well, this company is going to pay us so much money, we have to do what they want. And though I empathize with kind of the folks kind of trying to get that through, because at the end of the day, that also gets lots of people to experience Envoy. It seems a little, especially for the engineering teams and the product teams, it's definitely no way to build innovative things and exciting and creative things too. So that's something that internally, this is a thing that I push for extremely aggressively to focus on kind of the impact. But I can just imagine at other companies kind of, I see it now more than ever, how much this focus is important.
Yeah, I guess kind of like follow on from that. I mean, and for me, it seems that perhaps the mission, or the vision of Envoy, or let's say mission, is now perhaps greater than it previously was with what you're doing with Envoy Protect. As you said, you're literally saving people's lives, right, with this product.
Yeah.
So have you found that this has got a really good response from the team, that the team perhaps like there's been a change in the team in terms of, not to say that they weren't motivated before, but now they're seeing a bigger mission on what Envoy can do? Have you seen any kind of that impact in a positive way?
For sure. I mean, well, you have a bunch of people who now are like, we had all these other products and mobile and that kind of thing. All these people are now seeing significant traffic on those products. So this is, it was there before, but now it's kind of like growing at a much higher percentage in relation to kind of the core product. So it's kind of like, okay, we have this multi-product adoption that's going way better than ever before, but it's also kind of like it's much more unified as well. So they can tell their friends, and they can, like, this is great for recruiting, this is great for all sorts of other pieces around the company. Our mission has always been kind of to challenge the status quo of the workplace. And though in the past that kind of meant more like an experience focus, where it's like, hey, don't do things the old way, don't just put paper everywhere because that's the way that like you did it like 5 companies ago. Now it's, and that's still a reality that like we are actively like moving against. However, now it's kind of also around like, we need to challenge the status quo of how people do like safety and security. I think we noticed a lot of airport change when kind of the events happened a long time ago, and then there's now all this like super overbearing kind of the airport security, where you have to do all these different things for your protection, and it's kind of like super overbearing, and I think, like, especially if you look at a lot of the other vendors that are trying to like latch onto this kind of return to work ecosystem, it's basically bringing the TSA into your office. And it's kind of like, guys, I don't think that like this is the right process for this. Do you really want everyone in your office to be kind of like having a temperature check every like 10 minutes and being like checked for, hey, like, are you sure you didn't? And like, you have to make, the only way people are going to have safety and security and confidence in their workplace is if everybody is bought in on participating in doing these different things in the workplace, and holding each other accountable too. There shouldn't have to be IT or facilities or security having to like keep an eye on everyone to make sure that they are actually going through that right door and they did actually fill out the thing. Like, you shouldn't, nobody in facilities, by the way, and security wants to be that person either. They've just kind of been forced to in the past because there weren't great solutions available for them to actually do this. So kind of what we're doing is, and just being a very experienced and design focused company, we kind of took those same values and brought them to this process. So now it's easy, people don't mind it, and it's just like, it's just like, you don't have to think about it. And then you get all of the different safety and stuff you would have gotten through much more overbearing checks anyways. So our whole hypothesis is that we're challenging the status quo of the workplace, but it's also of like the way people do security now, where there's so much pressure to do like all these different temperature body scans and these overbearing things. We feel that there's much better ways of doing them, and that's kind of what makes our job really hard, because we have to like actually look at things in depth and not just build the thing that sounds really good. Because there's a lot of companies selling a lot of things that sound wonderful, but then when you actually use them, they don't work. The accuracy is like 1 in 10. It's a really creepy experience. And I know that people are like more than willing to reduce some of their rights because they want the safety and security in the workplace, but do they really have to? And that's kind of like where we're trying to challenge that status quo.
It's always a challenge being a CEO, running a company, especially whether it's the first time. Probably definitely harder the first time, than the second time, I'm sure. And definitely a challenge, I think, being a CEO in 2020, and being a challenge being a CEO of a company that builds software for the workplace, as you said, when you saw like 80% of people stopping going to the workplace. So with all these kind of challenges of like being a CEO and being a CEO, within your particular industry or the product that you serve, how have you sort of personally looked after yourself and stayed healthy and sane, so that you come in every day and you can give 100%, for you and for the team?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. I think everybody's gone a certain level of crazy, that's for sure. And we just have to acknowledge that that's how it is. I think everybody's a little bit different and that kind of thing. So that's A. B, I would say that there's like, it's seeing our team like execute on things and building these new things is incredibly motivating for a person like me, where that values building so much. So that's just like naturally been very, very helpful. And then it's also like we did some very like kind of like tactical things as well. Like on a daily basis, we basically had and still have a stand up for our Envoy Protect product suite, where we're looking like, hey, what are the major functionality people are asking for? What do we need to change? Where are we at? And then also we have an executive team stand up every single day as well. So then it's around like, hey, how's your team doing? What kind of issues are coming up? And that kind of thing. It can be pretty tough though, because a lot of people right now are taking this very differently. Some people are totally fine with it, but most people are like a little bit of like, this is really weird just being in this working from home. There's people screaming in the background. My roommate that I didn't expect I'd be near is nearby so often. And I think there's a lot of personal stuff going on, especially with like kids. If you have kids, like that is the biggest thing that is on those people's minds, because like it's like you kind of want to be with the kids and it's super cute when they come on the thing. But it's also kind of like for them, they're kind of like, okay, like I kind of want that on command, not like at random, especially if they're like having a tough conversation with someone and like the kid comes in, like, what do you do? So there's all sorts of this kind of stuff that's happening. And I think that some people are taking it not well at all. And there's a lot of kind of like, when this kind of thing happens, like a cynicism can happen and people are just like kind of, they're not sure when it's going to end. And we keep pushing the date back as to when we expect people to return back. And that unease is causing a lot of problems too. Like this kind of constantly changing environment is certainly not for everyone. I do feel that our company has been able to like kind of stay pretty stable regardless, but I can just imagine in a company that's much bigger where people joined literally for the stability and now they have to deal with like all of this COVID stuff, like that's got to get wild. And for those teams, those executive leadership teams and those CEOs that like basically just take everything super personally every time there's something that goes wrong, it's definitely it's a challenging period for every leader, that's for sure. But hey, if you're building stuff, if you're creating new things, if you're surrounded by people you love working with, that's what's going to bring you through the period.
Well, Larry, Gadea, it's been great speaking to you. I think, as I say, like 5 years since that initial Q&A, and yeah, really inspiring story in terms of the pivot there. Really appreciate you being on the show today.
Absolutely cool. Thanks so much for having me, and we'll talk in another 5 years, right? Hopefully a little sooner.
Hopefully sooner. Hopefully sooner. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. All right, thanks.